Two friends meet up to drink some beers and talk about past times. Not yesterday, but long ago, it's scandals, wars and crimes. From Stalin's reign to Prohibition, Tudors, Pompey, Bush and NASA's mission, Edison's bulk, Genghis Khan's rise to victory. Forget your old teacher, it's time for Pint-Sized history.
Hi there, and welcome back for our two-parter on Mao Zedong and the People's Republic of China, the first ruler of China with the People's Republic that we have been seeing from that time at the end of the Civil War in the 1940s, all the way to the current day with Xi Jinping. This is arguably one of the most important political parties of all time, wouldn't you say, Zack?
I would say that, and I would introduce. I'm Zack, by the way. Sorry, thank you, Joe, for introducing me there.
Oh, it's a two-part. Who's clicking on this that doesn't know who the fuck we are? It's the second part.
Yeah, right, Joe. Who's on part two when they haven't listened to part one?
Yeah, you're right. You know what? You're fair enough. Maybe one person clicked it. I'm Joe, by the way, and that's Zack. This is a good philosophical question or hypothetical question. What are the most important political parties of all time? Obviously, we'd put the Nazis in there because of their influence. Oh, would you say CCP's in there? I mean, I would think it's
I would say the CCP, the CCCP, which is the Russians. But more than either of them, Joe, are you forgetting about the Conservatives, who are arguably the most successful political party in human history?
Yeah, because I'm not laughing because I don't think the Conservatives should be there, but you said that in a drab way because it's a drab party and it's a drab country and there's no revolution with the Conservatives. No exciting.
No.
We were at 9. We were at 9 right there, and you just brought that right down to a 2. Like, no, but have you considered the Conservatives?
Yeah,
the Nazis and the CCP. Like, well, come on, have you not considered the Conservatives?
Yeah, we by that metric, the Conservatives and the Democrats were the two parties that fought against the Nazis in World War II.
So where were we, Zack? What happened in the last episode?
So Mao is now in power after the end of the 22-year-long Civil War, or as it's called, the Chinese Revolution. Take 2.
How old is he when he gets into power, Zack?
Ooh, well, this is 1949. He was born in 1893. So he is, testing my maths here, 56?
Wow. It's quite old.
He's had quite a long life now. He served in the uprising in 1912 a little bit, but not really. Fought against the warlords, then fought against the KMT, and he's the Don now. He is the big guy, Chairman Mao, at the top of the PRC, the People's Republic of China. No longer the Republic of China, the People's Republic of China. It's a communist state. Not really Marxist-Leninist, it's Maoist. It's the Chinese take on Marxism-Leninism. And Joe, we're jumping straight into a quiz. Can you name for me, alongside Mao Zedong, the 4 other major communist dictators in the world in 1949?
4 communist dictators in the world in 1949. Kim Il-sung.
He's one.
Joseph Stalin.
Joe Son's 2.
Oh, I'm forgetting how the Vietnam War started. Was Ho Chi Minh in charge?
Ho Chi Minh was in power. He was the first president of North Vietnam.
By this point.
The other one is from a Balkan country, which is not a Soviet satellite state, importantly, which is why I've kept it. Because there are communist leaders in the satellite states, but I consider them part of the wider Soviet Union. This one is not actually in a satellite state, but they essentially sort of are, but they aren't. And it's a key differentiation between the two of them.
Which country? Lithuania?
Not Lithuania, no. It's quite far away from Russia, within the Balkans. Great footballing regions.
Sorry, hold on. Balkans, I realise. Is this the leader of Yugoslavia?
It's the leader of Yugoslavia. Do you know his name?
No.
You share a first name?
I share a first name with many political leaders, Zack, actually. I'll have you know.
His last name is pretty iconic. It's 4 letters, starts with a T.
Yusip Tojo.
Josip Broz Tito.
Tito.
You don't know who Tito is?
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
Right. Yugoslavia is not a satellite state because there's like a famous argument that Tito has with Stalin, and he's like, we're not being under the sphere of influence. He's put his foot down, and he's like, Yugoslavia will not bow to Russia. But I think more than likely there's still like a good semblance of understanding between the two of them to be quite close. But anyway, good job, Joe. You did well. Mao Zedong is in charge of China. He's proclaimed the PRC in Tiananmen Square in the 1st of October 1949. He goes to Moscow straight away.
Thank God that's the only thing that happens in that square.
Nothing else has ever happened in Tiananmen Square ever.
Thank God that is the only piece of history that's ever happened in that one square in Beijing.
I wish I could think of something that's happened in Tiananmen Square, but I don't think anything has it? Nothing happened there.
No, literally, like, I'm going through every year. 1987, no. 1988, no. 1989. No, nothing in there neither. So I don't think that anything... 1990... No, they're definitely not. So no, you're right. I think Tiananmen Square... No, parade-free, no dramas, lovely place. I'd love to visit.
No iconic photography. Nothing.
No.
Nothing
No.
happened there.
And you know something else I don't like? I don't like people with shopping
carrying their
bags.
shopping bags.
No.
I don't like people who cross the road without looking to see if there are a line of tanks coming their way.
Left or right? Left or right?
Left or right. Look left, look right. That really pisses me off. Yeah. God damn it.
Left or right, man. You've got to be careful. Not that that means anything.
No, it doesn't mean anything. No, nothing happened.
No, of course not. I love you, Xi, if you're listening.
Yeah, should we explain, or for people that might know what we're talking about? Or
just search Tiananmen Square 1989, you'll know. Right, back to the podcast.
but realise that it's all lies. It's all propaganda.
Oh, yeah, it's all lies. And when you search it, there'll just be a blank Google page, and you'll be like, oh, wow, nothing happened.
It'll be lines of redacted black bars.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that redacted happened.
So we're a year into Mao's reign as leader, but immediately, Joe, something's happening.
Korean War.
Don't
tell me we're doing that again for the third time.
We're doing a little bit of the Korean War, a tiny bit. But I know, Joe, that you fucking hate us talking about the Korean War. And by far, according to the polling numbers of our analytics, it is one of our least favourite episodes of any wars we've covered.
No one gives a fuck.
Yeah, so China largely remained out of the war until the Americans reached the Yalu River. And by that point, Mao Zedong goes, enough is enough. And we did an episode of the Korean War, so I won't label what happens too much, but essentially it's just a counterattack and a counterattack and a counterattack and a counterattack and a counterattack across the 38 parallel back and forward, either way, for about 3 years.
From a Chinese point of view, this is important because there's not many communist states, and not all of them are the Soviet Union and, have nukes. So all these communist states are worried, like China and Vietnam and Korea, that if the Americans just kept on going, then they would eventually just continue into China and stuff. So that's why Mao Zedong realizes he's now got this existential threat on his doorstep, and he now has to actually help the Koreans, which is why they're there in the first place.
It's a good thing you mentioned that, Joe, because I actually didn't mention the Vietnam War in this episode too. It's not in my notes at all, but importantly, while the Chinese assisted in the Korean War, they also assisted in the Vietnam War by sending equipment and resources to Vietnam. I don't think they did it to anywhere near these. I don't think they put boots on the ground there. But I think the Soviets sent planes and the Chinese sent weapons and tanks and stuff like that. But anyway, Mao sends hundreds of thousands of people from the People's Volunteer Army, not the People's Liberation Army, into Korea. They push the Americans back. They get pushed back themselves. And there's a stalemate. An armistice is signed in July 1953 for the end of the war. 200,000 Chinese troops died during the Korean War. In Mao's defense of communism in another country, like you said. And back home, Mao is keen to push forward with his policies of social upheaval, taking China on its real path towards socialism and communism. He's already started a movement called the Land Reform Campaigns, which basically is aimed to destroy the traditional land-owning ruling class that were during the Chinese Civil War and before then. And when he comes into power, he signs the Agrarian Reform Law of June 1950. Which seizes land and assets from landlords and redistributes them to peasants. These reforms, which, on the face of it turn out to be like a really progressive socialist thing, are incredibly brutal. We're not even a full year into his premiership, and he's already showing us signs of what's to come. The aim is to redistribute land, but the end result is coercive and violent attacks on the landowning class, the bourgeoisie, which I mentioned in the first part, the bourgeoisie which he really focuses on in his 27 years in power. One part of the policy is called the Speak Bitterness campaign, where he gets former landlords to attend public hearings where they're interrogated and attacked by those they have wronged in the past. They'd often delve into violence, torture, and sometimes execution. And by the end of 1951, 10 million landlords have been identified and handled by the regime, whatever that means. Estimates suggest up to 2 million former landlords died as a result of the policy. It could have been as many as 6 million people, but many were also sent to reform through labour camps, where many of them perished. Wow. It sort of doubles up as not only a Mao putting forward his social policies, but also attacking counter-revolutionaries that he perceives to be a threat to his rule. It's very brutal, starts off that way.
Very purgy, very Stalin-y, very Lenin-y. We're going fully commie with this one. We're going, right, now we're in, how can we trim the fat, is basically what he's going. He's going to fuck
trim
this
the
shit.
fat cats.
It's purge is essentially it.
And then this feeds directly into the 3 anti and 5 anti campaigns, which were aimed to target capitalist entities in the government, industry, and party officials. But eventually, this soon becomes party at large. And these campaigns were responsible for the killings of hundreds of thousands to millions of bourgeoisie members. And bourgeoisie is really whatever you think bourgeoisie could be. It can be someone dressed in really nice clothes who just maybe has nice clothes. and anyone that has like signs of decadence, they're the bourgeoisie. It's any opponents to the Maoist, communist, socialist way of life. And apparently, in these campaigns, the vast majority of people die by suicide. Supposedly, one of the owners of a very well-known food store in Shanghai commits suicide as part of these forced waves of public confessions, because these landowners, these elites, the fear of the reprisals, the fear of these struggle sessions of being taken somewhere and tortured and attacked and criticised.
Maybe families attacked as well, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. If you're bourgeoisie, your family are too. So they thought they were better off jumping from high rises rather than being subjected to this humiliation and everyone hating them and any social and physical repercussions that might lead to. I was reading online and some people apparently... It said that people stopped walking on the pavement in Shanghai because of the common nature of people jumping off buildings next to it. But that's in the same breath of people saying, like, yeah, they jumped off. Like in Russia, there's opponents of Putin who mysteriously fall out of windows.
Yeah, you do wonder how many of them are suicides and how many of them are just pretend to be suicides. This really spells into the idea of how scary oppression is in some capacity. If it's an empire, if it's communist state or some fascistic system, it's quite scary because what you just don't think about is that if you are the enemy, it doesn't really matter who the enemy is. Like, obviously the most famous example of the enemy of the state is the Jewish people to the Nazis. That is by far the most famous one that we think of like being these people being taken out of society because they're unwanted. But it doesn't really matter which person, because everyone has their scapegoat. So obviously, there's lots of talk at the moment about what, who people are being blamed for certain societies and stuff. It wasn't just the Jews that were being attacked by the Nazis. It was any intellectuals. It was any people that were left-wing thought, communists, Slavic people, minorities in other ways, black people, homosexuals, disabled people as well. So you kind of wonder, like...
And the Roma gypsies.
And the gypsies as well. That's a very good point. And you have to think in that moment, like, imagine if you're one of these people that you can see the tides are turning in that direction. It's very terrifying. I mean, maybe this is a bit on the nose for me to be saying this when I'm literally talking to you as a Jewish person, but it's like, for the average person that's never had to worry about oppression or like the idea that people could
you got it good, bro. You got it very good.
When you've not done anything wrong. I am speaking as someone that really could not have it any better in terms of being worried about my life being taken from me in some capacity. I am white. I am from the capital city. I'm young. If we're really talking race, blonde, blue-eyed. If we're going to go that far, but not that it really matters in.
Do you think you're the master race? Just to piggyback off that, yeah, I am one of the groups of people that have been famously oppressed throughout history, and oppression seems to be rearing its ugly head again with like rising anti-Semitism. Obviously, I've not experienced it to the same extent that my forefathers and my ancestors have, because they experienced it pretty badly. I've said it in a few episodes, but my grandpa was literally in Austria during Anschluss, so he could have been put in a concentration camp or taken to Dachau before the real Holocaust actually started kicking off. But yeah, you're constantly aware of the tones of society and how they might shape you as a person. Because like the rising anti-Semitism and like the attacks in Golders Green and stuff like that, it's clear that the swings of society are turning once again and trying to find wrongdoers and undesirables that are making things bad. And that always happens when there's like an economic crisis or a cost of living crisis. Yeah. People don't look introspectively and they look outside to the outsiders who are potentially ruining things. Realistically, nothing that any of these minority groups or oppressed groups are doing is having any responsibility on the daily life of the average person.
To bring it back to the episode, and the point I'm trying to make about this moment in history in China is that for many of these people, bourgeoisie, whatever that really means in terms of who they are actually taking off the streets, these people would never ever have thought that their life would be in danger 20 years ago, or their dad when they were a kid thought, oh god, my child will have these issues when they grow up and they'll end up having to commit suicide by jumping off a tall building and stuff like that. It's like these problems are something that slowly build until you suddenly realize that you're actually fearing for your life in some capacity. And it's really difficult to recognize as people that don't necessarily have that same fear that they had in 1950s China, to think like, what would it have been like if you were there and you suddenly realize like, wow, like I'm kind of looking across the street, because if someone were to come up to me and go, you're exactly the type of person that we want off, and take him away and shove him in a van and throw him away or put him in a gulag, maybe you'll tell this, but I know that Mao had Chinese camps that were their own version of a gulag, and I can't remember what they're called, but
They're
Chinese
labour camps,
names.
so like re-education camps, basically, is what they're referred to.
Yeah,
as.
but there's a name for them. It's like a Mao Zing or a Lao Zing or something.
Lao guy.
Lao guy. It's really difficult in our own minds to recognize what that feeling would have been like to suddenly go from not having to think about something like that to suddenly having to think about it so drastically that, people stopped walking on the streets. And I bet you it's not just because of the fact that people were jumping off of big buildings. They're probably also not walking because they don't want to get confused for someone that might be bourgeoisie. They don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to risk it. I'm going to try and stay away from that type of stuff. It's a really weird custom for a society to get in. We talk about literally every time we have a dictator episode, we talk about these types of situations that normal people suddenly find themselves in.
Yeah, I guess it's a good time to re-educate listeners that we are not in support of these people or their policies. We just have to, laugh through the hardship as our way of dealing with the atrocities that people commit. And it's just our niche, isn't it?
Well, it's one of our niches, yeah, definitely.
The other niche is being stupid imbeciles.
Yeah.
Well, in your case, anyway.
Well, sorry, that's not a niche. Every podcast. We think that's not the standard for podcasts?
There is a vast, huge percentage of idiots that have podcasts.
Out there. Have you seen so many podcasts?
Yeah, at least we're self-aware, right?
Yeah, at least we recognise we're idiots.
Anyway, Mao was ridding China of its undesirables, as all good dictators do right from the offset. And once he's finished with his social reforms, he starts looking at the economy. China is a very impoverished, agrarian society at this point because of what's been almost 100 years of full-blown conflict. There's huge illiteracy levels, hyperinflation, infrastructure is completely crippled, diseases are quite widespread, life expectancy is very low. Apparently, life expectancy is around 35 to 40 years old. Wow. Super low. So Mao, to combat this, launches his first 5-year plan, making a quick push for rapid industrial development, and does so with Soviet assistance. He also takes on some educational and health initiatives.
Guys, you know how in the 1920s, he's talking to the Soviets, like, in the 1920s, you guys killed a shit ton of your population, but you did also boom really quickly.
How did you do that?
Like, oh, you want that secret? They're like, oh, no, what about? There's loads of just be aware, there's loads of famines. Oh, famines. Oh, no, the Chinese can deal with the famines.
Well, I don't know. We're coming to that. Don't
give us that industrial good shit.
You're actually too on the nose. So I will come back to that in a second, but Mao takes on educational and health initiatives like providing heavily subsidized doctors in rural areas to combat diseases and the low life expectancy. He expands basic education for millions of Chinese citizens, but again, that's very dependent on your social standing in China, because like I said, there's still this class system that exists. Even within this communist world, if you're a peasant, you're still looked down upon. You're not, free of the toil. You're not probably going to see a school chalkboard if you're a peasant farmer's son, basically. Mao wants to catch up with the West. And despite huge mismanagement of the Chinese economy at this time in history, with fraud and mismatched quotas and corruption and stuff like that, the country grew really fast. There was huge industrial growth. He forcefully collectivized and nationalized the land, begins expanding state control when starts doing state planning of the economy. Owned enterprises expand, and by proxy, the Communist Party takes a much greater role in the administrative and ideological lives of workers. And the investment in the capital construction doubles in size, and overall, this is a wide-ranging success for the Chinese economy. The economy grew by almost 9% a year, and when you look at us right now in the UK, I think we're getting 0.6% growth a year. So that is a huge amount of GDP growth per year. I don't know if it's GDP, but the sheer size of the economy is growing massively. I think it essentially doubles by the end of the first 5-year plan. New factory towns are being established, new industrial districts and cities, cooperative farming is taking hold commonly and increasing efficiency, and grain production is absolutely soaring through the roof, surpassing the targets set out in the plan. That's what the plan does. It sets out arbitrary targets you have to hit for steel and chemicals and industry and materials. It all seems great. The Russian economy is firing up, agriculture output is up, new towns, it all looks great, life expectancy probably rising, education rising. But in 1958, Mao launches a radical campaign with the sheer goal of outproducing Great Britain. He embarks on his...
What?
Yeah, I guess
specifically us.
Yeah, well, that's one of the markers, but I guess it's because he probably knows he's not going to outproduce Soviet Union or the USA or Germany, but we're one of the biggest superpowers. I guess more of it is more of a prestige and status thing. We're producing at a faster rate than the greatest empire known to man, basically.
And one of their oppressors. China might hate Japan the most, but like China does not have a good history with our country, with Britain. We were one of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking join the list, lads. But but you know, but the point I'm making is, from their perspective, sure, we might be kind of semi-chummy, but like the Chinese haven't forgotten. And I imagine for Mao in that moment, he's probably thinking, if we can prove that we're better than them, then maybe some of the scars that our population feels towards the anger the British gave us by getting us addicted to opium of all things, at least now we can prove to them that actually we're better than them in some capacity. It's like a one-up. It's like an easy win.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So he embarks upon the second 5-year plan, bolstered by the results of the first. And this plan is better known as the Great Leap Forward. And like you said, Mao employs many of the same methods that the Soviet Union employs, which in the Soviet Union result in the starvation of almost 8 million people, a smaller country than China.
Especially
he does
in
this
Ukraine.
thing. Yeah, absolutely in Ukraine. Ukraine was decimated by Soviet Union collectivization policies. And that's what Mao does. He does the collectivization of agriculture. And it does work in the first 5-year plan. It all looks great. But Mao directs the population to be bolder and go further through greater labor and greater willpower. And by 1958, this has grown out of control, this collectivization of agriculture. What was typically around 5 to 15 households merging their farms and making communes grows to 40 households, and then 300 households. And historically, collectivization leads to catastrophic man-made famines. And it looks right now that all agricultural production in China is completely dependent on it. Farmers are no longer able to keep the food they're growing, and peasants are told they have to provide for the other workers in society, in the city. So immediately there's a problem here. Farmers literally stand at the entrance to their storehouses full of grain with no ability to eat the grain and no food for themselves. The government at the same time begins mass mobilizing workers to account for a lack of investment in industry. He expects steel production to be higher, so millions of workers that were in once collectivized farms are now being taken to the cities, to factories, to make up for the fact that the state aren't investing in, like, you know, equipment and stuff like that, which make production higher. Some farmers are even forced to have backyard furnaces producing pig iron rather than actually working on their farms to supplement this economic advance through the use of steel and the production of steel. And in 1959, it's all looking great, and the grain targets met before, a horrible winter sets in. And this brings on...
That's bad timing. That's bad
all the
timing.
government policies have been like skating by because like harvests have been good and weather's been good, but now horrible winter occurs in China. All of the actions that Mao and the government have taken, getting involved in the lives of farmers, forcing them into collectivized farms, making them all reliant on the state for like tractors and, not tractors, but like production equipment and animals and stuff like that. It's all coming crashing down. There's an over-reliance on grain, and the government starts a campaign trying to exterminate sparrows. Because of this, locust populations grow out of control, and locusts love grain, so there's no sparrows to eat the locusts, and natural disasters occur, and food distribution networks start collapsing everywhere.
I know Mao would have given the go-ahead, but do we know if this was Mao's idea, or is there any argument that maybe Mao was misled by, you know, the scientists of the time really didn't recognize this, or was it more that he really wanted the goal, like, so he just let this way of thinking go forward?
Partially. So they forced farmers into collectivized communes. Like, that is from the top down, from the party down. That is something they want, and collectivization never works out well because it disincentivizes farmers, and like, there's loads of problems with it. But like, I guess towards the actual methods and techniques they're using, they're quite heavily influenced by Soviet farmers who do things called like deep plowing and tight planting or short planting, which are really, really bad methods for high yields. So can result in, like, you know, actively hindering your crops and your fields and your farms rather than helping them. So I guess to a certain extent, yes, it's Mao's fault. To a certain extent, it's he can't control. And to another extent, there's, like, you know, the actions of the farmers being pushed narratives by party officials who think the Soviet way might be better than their way, and this is what you're supposed to do, when farmers are probably saying this is not working.
Yeah.
So famine deaths are already starting in 1958, but they really kick off in the years 1959 to 1962, at which point somewhere between 20 million and up to as many as 55 million people have died from famine or starvation or disease.
Unbelievable.
Many of the deaths are actually rural farmers. Like, a lot of the deaths that happens are people working on their farms, but they can't eat the things they're producing because it's getting shipped off to the cities, to the workers in factories who the CCP just think needs it more for this great industrial push.
Including Mao Zedong, who was the son of a farmer. Like, that food and grain is going all the way to the imperial compound of Chairman Mao and the CCP, and, you know, the same place that Xi Jinping lives right now is going there, is going to the sons of farmers like himself. I don't know, am I right in thinking that Xi Jinping's dad, I know that he was a part of the CCP and got booted out.
Party official, yeah.
He was party official.
She was like in exile, and they did work as like they worked in a factory, I think.
Okay, so he wasn't a
tractor
farmer.
factory. I don't think so, no, but he was responsible, and maybe not exactly at this time, but later he was responsible for agricultural practices in
Yes.
I can't remember what region it was, but yeah, he was involved in it. It's probably because he saw the famine that he took such an interest in farming later, and I think that actually did have an effect on him.
It cannot not have had an effect. Like, if you're around in the 1950s and 80 million people, I mean, I don't know what the population of China
but it's important to say that, like, it wasn't
a huge
really
number.
Like, the urban centres, like, obviously are impacted by this, but it's the rural areas that are really impacted by this. It's those areas which really suffer, and the majority of deaths comes in these areas, in these rural provinces, rather than like Shanghai and Beijing. They probably don't feel it at the CCP leadership. Like, Mao probably won't be feeling it, but like the workers in those factories will. So yeah, it'll be wide-reaching. The Great Leap Forward is essentially stopped after this. And at the Lushan conference in 1959, the CCP examined the failings of the Great Leap Forward. They take like a bit of a self-critique about what's happening here and why there's a famine going on. This is in the middle of the famine, and Mao takes a political beating. It's actually really strange, like a dictator taking shit from like his underlings in the party. It's because his popularity is like kind of dropping off. Like in terms of the party in the internal political arena, his popularity is dropping off. But he's still hugely popular in the rural areas, which have directly been hurt by his policies. The peasants still love him, the army still loves him, but the internal elites do not like him.
He must have been pumping out propaganda.
Yeah, well,
like,
he has a cult personality, right? He's got his pictures in schools and statues in different like villages and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's given them doctors to help them live longer, and they're seeing all the good things. And they're going like, "Oh, Chairman Mao would never have done this. So this can't have been Chairman Mao. This
it must have been his Secretary of Agriculture.
His enemies, yeah. No, it has to be bourgeoisie. Whenever there's a problem, it's like it's a bourgeois capitalist element of society doing this. But anyway, the main people who attack Mao are Peng Duhuai and Liu Shaoqi. Mao, as a result of this, steps down as state chairman of the party. He's not actually stepped down as party chairman. He's still, the leader of China, but he stepped down from a very important post in name. Liu, in 1959, becomes chairman of the PRC, not the leader, but the chairman. He's basically Mao's stepping back from power in terms of like the economic sphere. Like, he's still really engaged in the party and the huge power struggles, but I think in a policy metric from like day to day, he's no longer like running the affairs of government. That's like Liu and the other opponents to Mao, because they've had a look at the Great Leap Forward and they've gone, this has actually been fucking shit. It's completely killed 55 million people. The person responsible for this can't be doing it anymore. And even though it is Mao, it's still not acceptable. So Mao takes a back seat, and his challengers push the notion he's fucked up the country a bit. And he also, Mao, has a public spat with Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union, in 1963. Wow. So it seems like Mao is facing challenges both from within and externally. He is feeling it hard right now. But knowing Mao and his tenacity and initiative politically, he's lobbying hard. He knows that internally in the big cities, they are not happy with him. His internal rivals in the CCP want to usurp him, but he goes to the countryside and talks about rightists and capitalist elements throughout China destroying communism and the communist way of life, being responsible for your shortcomings. And it's from here that he begins a movement known as the Cultural Revolution.
By cultural, is this a cult personality type thing? What does that mean?
You don't know what the Cultural Revolution is?
Maybe once you start talking about it.
It is fascinating, and it's crazy. It's like there are three big things that you know Mao for. One, firstly, is the Great Leap Forward. Secondly, is the Chinese famine. Thirdly, and I think like the most interesting part of it, is the Great Cultural Revolution, and it's mental. In July 1962, at a CCP conference, Mao issues a warning to Liu Shaoqi. He says, "The 3 red banners have been refuted. Land is being divided up, and you did nothing. What will happen after I die?" And Liu Shaoqi, full of confidence, says, "History will record the role you and I played in the starvation of so many people, and the cannibalism will also be memorialized, because importantly in the famine, people resort resorted to eating each other to survive. So things are heating the fuck up in the Chinese Communist Party. Mao looks around, and all he can see are revisionists and people who want to pull the country away from constant revolution. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that Mao has his opponents, and he needs a spark to regain hold of the political sphere. Mao is still popular in the countryside, despite what he did to them, and as a pretext to this cultural revolution, he launches the socialist education movement and purges officials in Beijing who aren't totally devoted to him. This movement exists from 1963 to 1965 and has the goals of purifying politics, economics, the organization, and thought. And as part of this movement, 3.5 million officials are sent into rural China to implement this purification. And they show films to audience members in villages, and they take it across the country and go, look at Mao, look at what he's doing, look at these bourgeois capitalist elements ruining this society. He is setting the ground for the mother of all uprisings, basically, against people who he considers... It is an uprising, but he's still in charge. So, like...
Yeah, it's bizarre. So what's he saying is the uprising? His enemies? Is this just essentially a pretext for another purge?
Yeah, it's basically the mother of all purges. Like, it's the biggest purge. The Cultural Revolution is basically the biggest purge that's ever happened, essentially.
Right, okay.
Because it happens across an entire country for, like, 8 years. Like, it literally happens...
And if he's convincing people beforehand, then he's basically getting them to do the purging for him. It's not like he has to then send out the secret police. He's essentially changing the narrative so that the purge happens within the people. The People's Republic will purge.
Yeah, and that's what happens. It goes fucking mental.
Wow.
You're gonna love it. I can't believe you've not heard about this before.
Yeah,
Jared.
I barely know anything about this.
Oh, you're gonna absolutely love this. It's crazy. So Mao's relationship with Liu Shaoqi and Peng Dehuai is deteriorating. The internal CCP, the moderates, are not liking the way this is going. And this movement, this socialist education movement, is responsible for the deaths of 70,000 people and millions of persecutions. This is before the Cultural Revolution even starts. In May 1966, the Politburo, who are the leading Communist Party officials, are called to Beijing. Mao prepares a document which says the following: those representatives of the bourgeoisie who have sneaked into the party, the government, the army, and various spheres of culture are a bunch of counter-revolutionary revisionists. Once the conditions are ripe, they will seize political power and turn the dictatorship of the proletariat into a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Some of them we have already seen through. Others we have not. Some are still trusted by us and are being trained as our successors. Persons like Khrushchev, for example, who is still nestling beside us. So he's basically like, he's taken a massive swipe at the CCP leadership and like everyone in like the upper echelons of communism worldwide. Yeah,
he's at all the haters. That's actually kind of crazy. That's like a huge play because he's kind of like, he's risking it all. Imagine, like, the narrative didn't go the way he wanted. He'd just be seen as a fucking tyrant. Khrushchev would say, we don't back this cunt. You know, they'd go, oh, screw this guy's awful. You know, they'd get rid of him. And suddenly
that is happening. Like, the moderates in the party are going, what is happening? Can we stop doing this? Like, can we pull back from the edge a little bit? Because this is all looking a bit crazy. This speech he gives is referred to as the 16th of May notification and provides the basis for the upcoming revolution, the Cultural Revolution. We need a different name for it because it's called the Cultural Revolution, but like it's really just the Cultural Purge or the Great Chinese Purge is what it should be known as. So Mao immediately starts purging a number of high-ranking officials in the Beijing party, and by early June there are mass protests and rallies set up where Maoists are in the crowd and they're getting whipped up into frenzy. And this is the match that lights the tinderbox. 10 days later, 1 million Red Guards gather in Tiananmen Square for an audience with Mao. He talks to them, spurs them on, and violence erupts. The main vehicle for this Cultural Revolution are the Red Guards. They're a student-led paramilitary organization which Mao puts together. Student-led. It's crazy. He finds a power base wherever. He goes
style.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, they're basically just like a bunch of like really fucking hyped up kids who they're going around now.
Wow,
they're the main vehicle for this revolution. Mao put them together a few years ago, and they're the ones who basically do everything he wants. They write to Mao asking for rebellion and a crushing of the counter-revolution, and then they adopt something called the Little Red Book, which I've not actually talked about, but it's a really important thing. Mao has published a Little Red Book. It's called Quotations from Our Leader Mao Zedong, basically, and it's basically just like pages and pages of gibberish sayings that he's made. I think it's probably plagiarized loads of them. Yeah, it's his Mein Kampf. A year later, from 1966, 1967, 150 million copies of this book have been printed, and it forms the ideological basis of what the Red Guard are about to do. The Red Guards are giving them free food and lodging across the country, and they push forward this ideal of destroying the four olds: customs, cultures, habits, and ideas. And gangs of Red Guards spread out across the nation like wildfire,
Sounds good.
attacking people in the streets, wearing bourgeoisie clothes, going into universities and schools, commanding students to kill their teachers. Suicide again occurs on a massive scale as people are driven to this.
God.
There are struggle sessions, which are basically like self-critiques. Xi Jinping's father and family were part of self-critiques.
Okay, yeah.
They beat people, torture people, execute people. They commit all manners of crimes. Is it just like this year in China must have been insane to see? Like literally total anarchy for a year.
What year is it?
1996, 1966, 1967, basically, at this point in time, yeah.
We were winning the World Cup in this.
You're right. We'd actually just won the World Cup. Because on 8th of August.
We just won the World Cup. James Bond was just coming out.
Culture Revolution in full swing.
The Beatles would be around for another 3 years before they depart. And over fucking in China, meanwhile, you got the most ridiculous revolution purge you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
What the?
What the? On the 8th of August 1966, the party published their 16 points focused on the counter-revolution and calls on the proletariat to do whatever they can do to uproot the bourgeoisie and the exploiting classes.
I do wonder what the Soviets were thinking at this time, because like they are right in the midst of not only the Cold War, which is really heating up in the 60s, but they're also in the middle of the space race, right? So they're dealing with these not only huge geopolitical questions, but also these huge technical questions. You know, they got the first man into space. There's a Cuban Missile Crisis just happened. And, you know, the Americans are planning to put the first man on the moon. And then they turn to the right and they see the fucking Chinese students going, kill him! Kill him!
Hang him! Kill your teacher! Kill your teacher!
Kill your teacher right now! There's like a million students just running around. Kill everyone!
Yeah.
Kill them all! He's like the most. He's like, what the?
That is literally what happens. It happens in like every city and every village across the country for like years.
And the Soviets like, what the hell is going on over there, man?
Yeah.
They're like, they're supposed to be our little brother, but you're getting off. The
Little bro
chain.
going mad right now. This leads to Red August, where in Beijing, in 1 month alone, nearly 2,000 people lose their lives. Mao orders his security forces just let it happen, and this then morphs into the Red Terror, and China is in a state of virtual civil war, as moderate opponents within the party are trying to battle it out in the different cities across the country to stay alive, and it is spiraling and spiraling and spiraling out of control. It is snowballing. And in 1968, Mao realizes that and orders the army to restore order, turning the country into a military dictatorship until 1971. And as the army step in, obviously the death toll rises. He officially declares the Cultural Revolution over in 1969. However, really it still exists until 1976. As it tails off, but it doesn't really completely end until then. But the damage is done and the economy of the country is crippled.
So this really didn't help. It's a purge, but essentially all it did was kill so many people that actually just really hindered the country rather than help.
Academics, intellectuals were murdered in their thousands, like loads of critics of the regime.
Essentially what I'm learning throughout these two parts is that while Mao, like in the first part, is a really good revolutionary, he knows what he's doing, he knows how to convince people, he knows how to bring people to his organization, he knows how to conquer, he's great at that. But what I'm really getting on the other side is that he is an absolutely awful ruler, because all he's really done is kill his people and try to cling on to power so heavily that he's now just letting purges go on for about 10 years. I mean, this is more than like the secret police and like the, you know, the KGB and stuff. This is like systemic killings of anyone that's like expressing free thought, like more than just like expressing the idea that Mao Zedong might not be the greatest man ever. It's also just expressing the idea that there could be any other opinion. It's like a level above the normal style of purging that we associate with the Soviet Union.
It's purging taken to another level. It's purging on steroids.
No wonder he's got the fucking record for dictator killing.
It's the enhanced purge.
This is unbelievable. This is so ridiculous. Holy shit.
So
he's awful. This is why he's S tier. I'm sorry. When we do the list, he's S tier because this is another fucking level.
No dictator has the bollocks to do what Mao Zedong has done.
Stalin wasn't doing this.
He's gone.
Well,
Oh, you want me out? You want me out? Fine. I'm going to burn it all down to the ground. I'll burn it all down to the ground.
Yeah, chaos is a ladder. He's like enjoying like everything burn around him, and he's just climbing to the top. That's crazy, man.
He's literally the Joker. So yeah, economy's crippled, academics and intellectuals are murdered in their thousands. The party is now all completely loyal and under the control of Chairman Mao. He's done it again. He's back at the very top now, at least on the face of it, because as soon as he dies, there's like this semi-demalification.
Oh, okay, because I was actually going to say, no wonder there's no demalification, because he's clearly so fucking unpopular.
Yeah, well,
he's having to kill people. No wonder they didn't have to go like do like a Khrushchev with Stalin and go, by the way, guys, I know you all love him, but he's actually really bad. In China, they're like, we know he's bad. He's killed everyone. There's no one left.
Yeah, but like the public still like. I think at this stage, the public still love him.
Can't be loved, but I imagine the propaganda is really... I mean, obviously he has the Red Guard, so if he's convinced the Red... What was they called? Is that what they called?
The Red Guard, yeah.
Yeah, if he's got them, then I imagine he's obviously got it to be able to convince other people that he's still all right.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned about his legacy, and we come to that a little bit at the end. But yeah, it's safe to say it's at least mixed at this point in time, and even after his death. As a result of the Cultural Revolution, 2 million people have lost their lives. 2 million people died in this huge countrywide purge. Areas like Guangxi have been particularly hit hard by it, with mass killings and even ritualistic cannibalism taking place by some Red Guard corps.
Wow.
The Red Guards even tried to eliminate cats, thinking they were a sign of bourgeois decadence. So the streets would be littered with cats with their paws tied together, lying out on the floors of the streets. Something else I didn't mention is that Mao, as part of his pests campaign, which was exterminating all the pests, tigers were also part of that, and they almost brought tigers to extinction in China because they were told to go shoot tigers and stuff like that. Yeah, it's crazy.
But why? Like, they've got nothing to do with the bourgeoisie, unless I'm missing something.
It's just like Mao's just mental. He's just
going scorched earth. He's just like, screw it. Yeah, can't have tigers now. Yeah, he's like hearing about one more rebellion. He's like, fuck it, that's it. No more tigers. One more, and the pandas are gone. One more, and I'll get rid of the pandas. Don't think I won't.
The kids in the back arguing. I will make those pandas extinct.
Those pandas will go. He's so unhinged. It's
I love how like if you're in the good graces of China internationally, you get sent a red panda. They send countries red pandas that they get on with diplomatically well. Like, and if you get pissed off with them, they ask for it back.
Oh really?
No.
That's quite cute, to be fair. I wish that was how all diplomacy worked all the time, because that's actually quite sweet.
Yeah.
You go, we want our animal back. Putin invades Ukraine, and America's like, all right, we want our eagle back. I'm done. That's unacceptable. You can't be doing that.
Part of the prominent individuals purged in the Cultural Revolution include Xi Jinping's dad. He was a victim of the Cultural Revolution. He was beaten and sent into exile, and his half-sister killed herself after being persecuted. Deng Xiaoping, who was a future leader of China, was purged himself once in 1967 and later again in 1976. With Mao fearing that Deng might try and roll back the communist rule of China, Deng Xiaoping did do that. He did roll back communism from China.
So was Deng Xiaoping a prominent political person in China?
Yeah. He was a really high up person in CCP, but he was a moderate. So like,
I can't imagine us doing a Deng Xiaoping episode. Maybe we will one day. But so who was he? He was just like...
I would love to. I think he's awesome.
Because he's a legend, because he essentially stopped China from being total shit to being...
he basically stopped China from being communist and made it a free market capitalist economy. Like, China today is not communist. China today is... It's like the same type of communism that Putin is. It's like, there is like intense riches and capitalism galore. China is open to the world for trade, and like I think inherently communism pushes back against that, because like it doesn't want to be part of the neoliberalistic global economy.
So who was Deng?
So Deng was like, I think, a couple of leaders after Mao, and he was his moderate at the time, who got purged a couple of times during the Cultural Revolution, but eventually when he becomes premier of China, he sets China on this path towards like modernization and tries to undo some of the economic damage, which he does. He does it fantastically as well. Deng Xiaoping's oldest son, Deng Pufang, was tortured and thrown out of a 4-story building, becoming a paraplegic during the Cultural Revolution. Liu Shaoqi, you might remember I talked about him earlier. He was Mao's basic nemesis in this period of time. He was purged. The Premier of China, Zhou Enlai, called him a criminal traitor, enemy agent, and scab in the service of imperialists. He was imprisoned in solitary confinement and died as a result of the complications from his imprisonment. Peng Duhui, one of those leading officials at the time when Mao was forced to step down, was tortured by Red Guards and publicly humiliated for years. He was taken to struggle sessions where he was paraded in chains to thousands of jeering crowd members in one occasion at a stadium with 40,000 soldiers. He was imprisoned for the rest of his life and eventually died after years of torture and deprivation. So that is the Cultural Revolution in a nutshell. And going into his final years now, Mao's health is starting to decline. He was not a fit guy anyway. He had multiple STDs. He was an avid smoker. He may have even had ALS. Shout out the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Well, nice. The one thing I knew about him was that as a younger man, he would have several affairs. He would be known to walk about with.
He was a dog.
He was a total fuckboy.
An absolute dog, yeah.
Mao Zedong, as I feel a lot of these dictators are, or at least them or their offspring. They often seem to be a bit fucking.
Yeah, Mao actually had a relationship with his 16-year-old secretary. So he's
Mao did.
Yeah, he's a bit chopped unk. Uncle Mao's chopped.
But that's the thing, he is a total perpetual unk as well, because he's got the receding hairline and he looks old as fuck. But then he's also there going, oh, I'm the Billy Big Bollocks. I'm getting all these young kids to go kill people for me. I've had multiple affairs on my wife. He's just like that classic type of no one can harm me, so I'm just going to be a total kind of dictator.
God complex, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So on May the 11th, 1976, Mao Zedong suffers a heart attack. A month later, on June 26, he suffers from another heart attack. And on the 2nd September, Mao has a third and final heart attack, which is essentially the final nail in the proverbial coffin. On the 9th of September, 1976, a Communist Party announcement, a national radio broadcast announced the news that shortly after midnight, Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao, had died at the ripe old age of 82 years old. The broadcast and his slogan above his coffin says, "Carry on the cause left by Chairman Mao and carry on the cause of the proletarian revolution to the end." His embalmed body was wrapped in a CCP flag, and he was put in a glass coffin in the Great Hall of the People, where he laid in state for 1 week. 1 million Chinese people went by to pay their respects, with many of them crying. It was televised for the world to see. Mao Zedong has died, and now China is dealing with the aftermath of his tenure, which is a mixed one in both the CCP and China in general. He rapidly industrialized the country and might have been one of the leading reasons as to why China is a country and economic superpower it is today. But at the same time, he was absurdly cold and cruel, and his reign was responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of people. In June 1981, the CCP, 5 years after Mao's death, assessed the legacy of Mao. And an expression took hold that Mao had committed major setbacks to the People's Republic and undertook big mistakes from 1965 onwards. But his contributions far outweighed his mistakes, according to the CCP anyway. An expression now exists, which suggests that Mao's legacy was 70% right and 30% wrong. And he stole...
It's a bit weird way of putting it. It's like, you're taking the maths on that. Our economy grew by 70%, but we also killed 30% of our population. Like, what the fuck does that mean? God, the CCP suck, man. Yeah. I love you, and please don't ban us from TikTok.
We love Xi. We love Xi.
We love you, Xi. But, fucking hell, man. The CCP were really fucking annoying at times.
But he still holds a rich personal loyalty and favourability from many Chinese people, even today, despite his horrible actions, which undeniably ruined many of their lives. And that is the story of Mao Zedong.
Yeah, very good, mate. That was really enjoyable. I'm interested because what you said about his legacy, you said earlier, and I was actually thinking about this before you said it. You said earlier that you don't get the China you have today without him, but you also need to include the fact that Deng Xiaoping was a huge part of it, because without him, and I kind of look at it and I go, yeah, would China be a superpower today if Mao hadn't done what he'd done? And I guess the answer is no, but at the same time, maybe another leader would have probably done something, because they're literally known as the sleeping giant. That was the nickname of China for so many years, because everyone knew that a country as big, as historic, as cultural, as impressively, They could have done anything. Like in
Yeah,
another
but
universe, they would be
in that
superpower.
same frame of mind. We don't refer to India as a sleeping giant when it's got all the same advantages that China has.
Yes, but there is a slight difference, and that's that India
Was colonized
never well. No, China had its own colonization issues, not to the same extent. But the difference, I'd say, is that India was always a country that was made up of warring nations that never came together until much, much later in its history. China had been ruled under one leader for thousands of years. Obviously, it had its problems, but it was obviously clearly a giant for so many different parts of global history. And so it makes you wonder if they've been able to do that for so many millennia, then surely it will get back to that stage eventually. So I do kind of feel like with China, yeah, Mao Zedong did a lot, but at the same time, surely it was always going to happen at some point anyway. And really, Mao Zedong is lucky, because if Mao Zedong didn't have Deng Xiaoping after him, then maybe we would be looking at China in 2026 and going, holy shit, Mao really fucked it.
In that same breath, there were plenty of moderates. So, like, Deng Xiaoping was probably, I have a really, really high opinion of him. That's because I studied him at A level, and I did like a course on him, and I really thought what he did was incredible. But he also obviously still had his weaknesses too, and he was in charge during Tiananmen Square, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So like there was still this like CCP rule that was horrible and repressive to people. So I don't want to glaze him too much. But what Mao did, and what I think we have to give him more credit for, despite the way he went about it, is rapidly industrializing the country. Like in the space of 10 years, basically, he turned this country from being this like agrarian kind of backwards economy to like having the semblance of a modern industrial country. And that kind of paves the way for this like giant boom later down the line of like Chinese manufacturing and stuff like that. That's the view I have of it. It might be different to what like modern historians and economists think about the way that China evolved. I essentially think that Mao laid the bedrock, and you can only do that if you're Mao, because you have the popularity of the people. You can force hardship upon them for the greater benefit of the country. I think actually looking at the economics, the rural to urban split of China didn't. I read through like a couple university theses on the Chinese economy in my research, and apparently the rural urban split didn't happen. Like it wasn't that vast. But like essentially setting the bedrock and these state planning and state control and state-owned businesses forms the foundation of what's to come next. And you can only do that when you're popular, and you force people to do that and make them just do what you want in pursuit of a wider ambition and bigger goal that you have down the line. And I think that maybe has a bit more weight in terms of then allowing people like Deng Xiaoping to later thrive and be able to turn this country, which is sort of like almost there, but not actually there, to get to what, the biggest economy in the world today.
But could another leader not have done that? If you'd had a Chairman Mao that was slightly less idiotic in terms of how he tried to get his, great leap forward going. A leader that didn't care about a cultural revolution, a leader that would be happy to step down once he's gotten his great leap forward. In a way, if China had had its own George Washington, and that's a very random example, but George Washington was not only a military leader that got them to a space that they'd never been in before, but after that, not only did he bring in some really good reforms for his nation, but he also stepped down and made sure there were plans to step down and have term.
Yeah, but that's like the only time that's really happened, right? With someone like makes a nation that like that's one of the most incredible points about George Washington is that he saw that I don't know, maybe that's like a
power corrupts. He saw power corrupts.
I don't know if that's like actually the historical accurate thing to what happened.
It is, yeah.
Or if he was like pushed aside by like Jefferson
no, he did step down.
Him.
They wanted I'll tell you a little bit about George Washington very quickly. He didn't want it to be kings. He wanted to be a certain year limit, and that would be the amount of time that a president could be president of a country. And that was really, really important to shaping how America moved forward. And it was really, really clever, and it worked really well. And you're right. Maybe it's a bit ideological.
It's a very Western lens for like what you're trying to input on China, who's had like thousands of years, like you said before, of one person the entire time. Yeah, and I think if you have these struggles and you have this rotation of dictators or people at the top of the CCP, like they're not going to be able to push through as violently their reforms because there's going to be like political power plays and movements and struggles over who goes forward, what direction they're taking. But Mao has got one direction, and that's the direction that the Chinese take for 27 years while he's in power, and he has those power struggles to make sure that it is his direction that comes forward at the end of the day. But it's an interesting debate nonetheless, and I'm sure people...
You can certainly debate it, which is what makes Mao Zedong a really interesting character, because you can certainly debate the impact he's had in comparison to some other dictators.
I'm sure people who know better than us will have a better better answer for that. But I think there's probably two ways of looking at it. And one is the way that he completely ruined the country and it could have been taken forward quicker. And the other way is that, without this rapid industrialization, you wouldn't be able to have this leg up and this foundation that he built. So yeah, I think there's two ways. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the Pint-Sized History podcast. It has been a pleasure to walk you through the life of Mao Zedong, and I've had a horrible lisp the entire time because I've got this huge ulcer in my mouth, so hopefully that wasn't too much of a problem for anyone to get through.
And before we go, just to say that for next week we will be doing another huge topic, and it's actually quite coincidental that we spent the last few minutes talking about George Washington because for next week's podcast, which will be coming out, I believe, on July the 2nd, so just before Independence Day in America, we will be doing a two-parter on the American Revolution. So we will be talking a lot more about George Washington and all of that part of world history, which again is one of the most important parts of world history, at least in the modern lens in terms of what we look at today. This is a hugely crucial part of how we look at the world today, and we will be talking about that in a big two-parter next week. So please join us for that.
Yes.
It's been great chatting to you, Zack.
Let me sing us out. Say, can you see?
Is this a thing now?
By the dawn's early light.
No.
Thank you very much. I've been Zack.
This can't be a thing.
And that's been Joe. And once so proudly we
This can't be a thing. You sing us out with the next podcast.
Let us leave it.
No, goodbye.
See you next week. Bye.